Daf Ayin Beis, Rabbi Yossi. This halacha that the sofer could sign on the get is to be attributed to Rabbi Yossi Diover Mili Lo Mimseri L'Shliach, which means the following: that according to Rabbi Meir, Mili Mimseri L'Shliach, and therefore we have to be choshesh for a takola in this get, because what we're afraid of is maybe the Baal will be mitzvah to two people and he'll say, Imru leploni shiich tov haget, uleploni leploni shiich temu. So he commanded the person who's listening to him to go ahead and appoint a shliach to write the get. And this person who hears him, because as we'll see, is sensitive and wants to prevent the sofer from busha, he goes ahead and he tells the sofer to sign the get. And that was below Yediyas Habal, because Mili Mimsel Shliach means that the Baal wanted to tell this person or these people to appoint so-and-so to write the get and be the sofer for the get. The Baal never revealed or indicated his will that the sofer himself should be one of the Eidim. And therefore, according to Rabbi Meir, we should not allow the sofer to sign the get at all. Only the Eidim could sign the get. Whereas if you hold like Rabbi Yossi, that Mili Lo Mimsel L'Shliach, then we have no chashash, because the sofer is not going to write a get until he hears directly from the Baal a tzivui, a mandate, commissioning him to write the get. And if the Baal wants to appoint him on the chsima, so too he has to hear directly from the mouth of the Baal that he is being commissioned to sign the get. So we have no fear that the sofer might come to sign on the get without a tzivui habal. So the Gemara now asks the following question: V'isal k'daitach shemoda Rav Yossi the Omer Imru. The Gemara wants to prove that, or shall we say, disprove the original premise here that we had on Daf Ayin Aleph Amud Beis, that Rav Yossi agrees that the Baal could tell so and so, I want you to appoint so and so. That's called Imru, Omer Imru. Then again, Nafik Minei Chuvra. We're back to the same problem, the same takola that we had before, according to Rabbi Meir. The Zimnim the Omer Lahu. The Baal will say to Shnaim, Imru l'sofer v'yichtov, u'leploni v'yachtamu, and that's called Omer Imru. You go ahead and commission a sofer and two Eidim, and Mishum Kisu for the sofer, we have to be concerned about the possibility that these people who heard the Omer Imru, they may go ahead and machtim ilay, they'll be machtim the sofer, because they don't want to cause any embarrassment to the sofer. Hey, why doesn't he allow me to serve as an aid? Ubalo Amar Achi. But the Baal never told the Eidim that they should sign the get, nor that the sofer should sign the get. So therefore, even according to Rabbi Yossi, we have to passel the chasimas hasofer because of this possibility of a takola, because Moder Rabbi Yossi be Omer Imru. So from the fact that we see that according to Rabbi Yossi, if the sofer signs the get is kosher, we must assume that Omer Imru has the same identical status according to Rabbi Yossi as Mili and Lo Mimser L'Shliach, and therefore the Shliach always has to hear the tzivui directly from the Baal. And now your answer that you gave on Ayin Aleph Amud Beis to explain our Mishnah that the Reisha reflects the Shita Rabbi Yossi, and it's coming to teach me that Dafka, if he says Ksuvu, then it's possible, but if he says Imru get kosher, therefore we have to go back to the original answer, Reisha Rav Meir, this Sefer Rabbi Yossi. And here's where we have to introduce Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi says Kula Rab Yossi. That when it says in the Reish of the Mishnah, Amar Lahem Ksuvu, and we were medayik from the Reisha that if he would have said Tnu, then it would have been effective. No. That's not the proper diuk, and that's not bedafka. But even if he would say Tnu, it's not effective. It's invalid. As we saw in the Sefer, Achiyoma l'sofek sov, uli edim chasumu. There has to be a direct tzivui of the Baal to the ears of the Sofer and to the ears of the two Edim. Oh, so now Rav Ashi introduced a new mode or method of interpreting a Mishnah, and that's called Lomi Boy Ka'omar. And the Mishnah should be read in the derech, in the mode of Lomi Boy. In other words, what's Lomi Boy? Lomi Boy means not only in the simple situation, but even in the more complicated situation. And here's how we're going to read Lomi Boy in multiple ways. Lomi Boy, Heicha Delo Amar Tnu. It goes without saying that if he didn't say Tnu, all he said was Kisvu, then it's not effective and it's not valid. If they tell someone else to write the get because he only said Ksuvu to this person, Elafilu Amar Tnu, lo, it's not effective and it's not kosher, even if the Baal said Tnu. Lo mi boyechad lo amar lebei tlosim. It goes without saying that if he didn't say Tnu to three people, and therefore he didn't make him into a bezdin, it's not effective. Elafilu amar lebei tlosim, even if he said it to three people. We're going now according to Rabbi Yossi against Rabbi Meir, and he doesn't make him into a bezdin, lo, and therefore it's not going to be effective if these three people tell someone else to write the get. V'lomi boy heichad lo amar imru, and it goes without saying that the get will be possible if he didn't say imru, go tell Ploni, and he'll write the get el afilu amar imru. Namilo, we still apply the principle of mililo mimsur l'shlichus, even in the case of Omar Imru. And that's what the Sefer wants to tell me, that it's not effective until the Baal directly says to the Sofik Sov and directly commissions face-to-face the Edim to sign the get. And Tanya Kavasi the Rav Ashi, now we quote a Brisa to support Rav Ashi, Kosav Sofer. The Sofer writes the get, Lishma, L'Shem Ishazu. V'chas meidim l'shma l'shem ishazu. Afal pik sheksavu v'chasmu v'nasnu lo. Even though they wrote the get, they signed the get, they gave the get to the Baal, and the Baal in turn v'nasnu lo, he gave the get to the Isha. Hare haget batel. The get is batel. Why? Because the Sofer, neither the Sofer nor the Edom got a direct sivui into their ears from the Baal. Yishmu kolo, until they hear the voice of the Baal. So what do we see from this brisa? So the Gemara says that in this brisa, the Tana of the brisa emphasized the word Yishmu, and Yishmu means they have to hear it. Lafuki miman diyomar moder Rab Yossi v'omer imru. That even if the Sofer didn't hear the tzivui directly from the Baal, but the Baal told so-and-so to appoint a Sofer, it's not valid. And this is against the Shita of Rav on Daf Ayin Aleph, who holds that a cherish yochel damri tochak sav is kosvim and ostim getli ishto. And here we're going to tell us that Rav is incorrect, and rather we have to hear his kol. And in the case of a cheresh who's not only deaf, but he's also mute, and we cannot hear the kol of his tzivui, then his kol, since it wasn't heard, invalidates the get. And even though Rav says that writing is like speaking, and therefore he's not considered an ilem sheni yochel ladar because he's yochel ladar mitoch haksav. Nevertheless, it's not kol, and therefore the get is possible. In the case of a cheresh, she yochel ladar mitoch haksav. And now we're up to the Mishnah on Daf Ayin Beis. Now this Mishnah is going to address Lishonos of the Baal in the light of the following question. Did the Baal intend that the get should be chal after his death? So if a man says to his wife, Ze gitech im mati, how do we understand it? We understand it as li achar sheyomus. After I die from this illness, or zekitech liachar misa, where explicitly says the get should be chal after misa lomar klum. In all those three cases, lashonos, the mashmos is that he wants the get to be chal after misa and ain't get liachar misa. But says the Mishnah, if he adds the word me'ayom, so although imati implies liachar shem yamus, but he added the word me'ayom, is therefore we assume he wants to get to be chal lemafreya after he dies me'ayom. Or if he says me'achshav, imati, if I die, I want to get to be chal me'achshav, meaning lemafreya, harei a get. It's a get michayim and not a get lachar misa. If a man says to his wife a double language where he contradicts from the Reisha to the Sefer me'ayom, which implies that the get should be chal lemafreya, but then he says uliachar misa, the get should be chal lachar misa. Here we have a suffix. We vacillate. What was his intention? Does he intend that the get should be chal me'ayom, but only b'tnai that he'll die, and therefore the get will be chal michayim, and she doesn't fall for yibum? The get is valid. Or should we say no? His kavana was liachar misa. He reverses his original intention to give the get me'ayom, and the get should be chal today, but he says liachar misa, which means that he wants to get to be chal after his death, and then get lachar misa. And therefore get ve'eno get, it's a suffix get. In mace, if he dies and he has no children, then choletzes v'lo mesiyah bemes. Choletzes means we're afraid the get is not a get because he was choser bo when he said liachar misa and ain't get liachar misa. Therefore, she falls for yibum and she needs chalitza to marry someone else. But lo mesiyah bemes, we can't allow the yovam to be miyabim because maybe the get is a get and she's eishes achiv shalom b'makom mitzvah because he said the word me'ayom and then he added lachar misa as a tanai. A man says to his wife, Ze gitech me'ayom im mati micholi zeh. His t'nai is that he will die from this disease, and then subsequently via Amad V'olach B'shuk. He has a recovery, and he walks around in the shuk. But then v'chola umes, he fell back to illness and he died. So is this called a kiyum t'nai? Do we say no? The very moment that he was omed, then the t'nai is bata, and the get therefore is invalid. Or should we say no? Even though he had a temporary recovery, but the fact that now he dies because he goes back to the original choli, then we should say that there was a kiyum t'nai, and the get is bata because in mati v'choli zeh, he died from this choli. Omdin also. We evaluate him. And we take a physician's coronary report. If we're going to say that even though he was holich b'shuk, he had a temporary minor recovery, but not a real serious ripoy ligamri micholio, no. He died machmas cholia rishona, and therefore harei get. The Tanai was mekuyim v'im lav. But if he died not because of the original choli, he already was omed and he recovered from that choli, but rather he died from a different choli, is then the Tanai was not makuyim of imati micholi zeh, and therefore the get is no get, and shall need yibum if he died childless and left a brother. Gemara is medayik here and asks the kasha from the fact that it says in the Mishnah, Ze gitech imati, lo amar klum alma imati kiliachar misa dami. We interpret the words imati, means not if I'll die, but when I'll die, is v'hadar tani, and yet, what are we going to do with the next part of the Mishnah, what we call the Sefer the Reisha? It says, me'ayom imati, and again, he uses the same two words imati, or me'achshav imati, again, he utilizes imati, and yet the Mishnah says the get is valid. Alma imati lavli achar misa dami. Imati is only a tanai, but it doesn't mean that he wants the chalos hagerishin to take effect after his death. Because if we're going to interpret liachar misa, then even if he said me'ayom imati, the din should be that it's a safek get. Because we saw in the Sefer of the Mishnah that if he says me'ayom u'liachar misa, then hareze get v'edo get. So now we have a stira in the Mishnah itself regarding the interpretation, the meaning of imati. On the one hand, the Reisha of the Mishnah indicates clearly that imati means liachar misa, and yet, if we move forward in the Mishnah, in the case where he says me'ayom imati, we're not going to say that it's a safek get, that maybe me'ayom indicates l'mafreya, and it's a get michayim. And then imati means that it's a get lachar misa, and we don't know whether to interpret that as a chazara or a tanah. No, the Mishnah says that if he says me'ayom imati, then it's a valid get, which means that she doesn't fall for yibum at all. She doesn't need even chalitza. Omar Abaye, Abaye says that the language in Mati can be interpreted in two ways. And what will determine whether or not we take this interpretation of Imati or that, it depends on whether he added the word me'ayom. Shtei l'shonos mashma. Mashma kime'achshav. It sounds like Imati means a t'nai. The get should be chal now if he dies. Umashma lachar misa. But if he says imati, it sounds like he's saying kisha amos or liachar sha'amos. So how do we determine? How do we weigh the scale in this direction or in that? Amalo, if he says to her me'ayom imati, then we interpret the words imati as a t'nai. And Kamadi Amalo, Achshav Dami wants to get to Bichal today if he will die. But Lo Amar Me'ayom, if he didn't add the word Me'ayom, then Imati is Kamadi Amalo Liachar Misa Dami. Then we interpret Liachar the words Imati as Liachar Misa, and there's no get. The Mishnah says that if a man says to his wife, Zegitech Imati, Lo Amar Klum, Amar Av Huna, no. That's not the right interpretation of the Mishnah. We have a suffix here. Even though he said imati, we don't know. Does he mean imati as a t'nai? But the get should be chal from now michayim, and it's a valid get, and therefore she doesn't need chalitza. Or shall we say that imati means when I die, meaning after I die, and therefore the get is not chal, and she falls for yibum, and she needs chalitza. The Mishnah says that it's not a get. According to your interpretation of Huna, how could the Mishnah use the language lo amar klum when it's a suffix gerish? And the Gemara answers lo amar klum de'asiro li alma. If you're talking about being matir her to get married without chalitza, then we're going to say lo amar klum. It's not valid because we have a suffix. Maybe the get is not valid. Why? Because imati means kisha amos or liachar sha'amos. And therefore she's asura li alma until she receives chalitza, because we're afraid that maybe he meant that the get should be chal yachar misa. On the other hand, liyavim nami asira, she cannot fall for yibum because we have a suffix that maybe the get is chal, and she's eishes achiv shalom b'makom mitzvah. Why would the get be chal? Because we're going to interpret imati, according to Rav Huna, in this side of the suffix, as a tanai. But the get, he meant that the get should be chal mafreya michayim. Frek the Gemara, that's okay if you're interpreting the Reisha. But let's jump ahead to the Seifa. V'ami the Seifa. In the Seifa where a man says, Me'ayom lachar misa, choletzes. That's the case where she needs chalitza because... Just 1 second. I'm sorry. That choletzes v'lo misyabeves. Why is there no yibum? Because we interpret me'ayom as l'mafreya, and even though he said afterwards liachar misa, we have a suffix michlal de reisha. When it says lo'omar klum in the reisha, it's not a suffix at all. Yibumi nami yame. The get is not chal, and the reason for that is because imati clearly indicates liachar misa. And now the Gemara is going to answer based on a sugya and a machlokas shin chacham Rabbi Yossi at the end of Masechet Bava Basra daf kuf lamed vav. And Rav Huna here is only going according to the Tana in Bava Basra, the dissenting view of Rabbi Yossi. What do we learn in Bava Basra? What is the machlokas there between the chacham and Rabbi Yossi? A man gave away all his property in a matana to his son, and he wrote it in a shtar. He hands over a shtar to his son, and he writes in the shtar that the matana should be valid liachar misa, after he dies. Now, the issue is, does he have to add the word me'hayom in order to validate the matana? Well, maybe he doesn't even have the word hayom. What would be the svara to drop the word vayom and not require me'hayom in order that the matana should be chal mafreya from the moment that he gave his son the shtar matana? That's called Rabbi Yossi's famous shita of zmano shel shtar mochiach olav, which means that the very fact that there was a date written on the top of the shtar, that date is indicating when the shtar should be valid and chal. Devas Nisim, our Mishnah in Ze Gittin Mati Lo Omar Klum, because we interpret his words of Imati as meaning the get should be chal hamisa kirabanan. That reflects the Shita Rabbanon in the Sugya in Baba Basra, and rejecting Zman Shmochiach Olav. And therefore, when he says Ze Gittin Mati, even though, I'm sorry, cross out those words, because, not even though, but because he did not add the word Me'ayom, and we don't accept Gito shel Zmano shel get Mochiach Olav like Rabbi Yossi, therefore Imati means that the get should be chal liachar misa. So when the Mishnah says Ze Gittin Mati Lo Amar Klum, it's not even a suffix, and therefore she doesn't even need chalitza. So that reflects the Shita Rabbanon, who rejects Zmano shel shtar mochiach olav. Whereas Rabbi Yossi would hold that if he added the Zman in the shtar, that itself proves and substitutes for the word me'ayom. And Rav Huna, who holds that Ze Gittin Mati, even if he didn't add the word hayom as a suffix gerushin and choletzes v'lo misyabeves, the Omar ki Rabbi Yossi, the Omar Zman shel shtar mochiach olav. So the Gemara asks, Rabbi Yossi, if Rav Huna holds like Rabbi Yossi, is then Zmano shel shtar mochiach olav, it's as if he said me'ayom, the get should be chal michayim, and it's a real, valid, 100% valid get. And therefore, chalitza lo tiboy. She's a grusha. There's no need for chalitza. Where's the element of suffix here? If Rav Huna is saying that mati should be interpreted in the light of zmano shel shtar, then the shtar clearly indicates, according to Rav Yossi, that the get should be chal today michayim limafreya. And if it's a valid get, there's no need for chalitza. Maybe you'll argue. I'm going to prove to you that Rav Huna did not have any doubts and vacillate about whether we accept Rav Yossi about Zman Shel Shtar. Rabba bar Huna bar Avua Chalash Ulegabei Rav Huna v'Rav Nachman. Amalei Rav Huna Rav Nachman boy minei. Please ask the following question: Be Rabba bar Avua Halach Rav Yossi or Ein Halach Rav Yossi? Amalei Rav Nachman responds to Rav Huna. Time of the Rav Yossi lo yadana. I don't even understand the logic of Rav Yossi in the case of Mati. Halachi boy minei. You want me to ask if the halach is like Rav Yossi? I mean, Rav Yossi doesn't have any logic. Amalei so Rav Huna says, listen, buddy. At boy minei halach. You just ask the question whether the halach is like Rav Yossi, and time of the Rav Yossi anamina. Come back to me and I'll explain to you the logic of Rav Yossi. Boy minei, so Rav Nachman fulfilled this mission that was imposed upon him by Rabbah. I'm sorry, by Rav Huna. And he asked Rabba bar Avua. Amalei Rabba bar Avua responded, Hachi Yom Rav. I'm going to quote to you. Rav Aloch Rav Yossi. Lebasa the Nafik. And after he left Rabba bar Avua, Amalei Rav Huna says to Rav Nachman, Hainu time the Rav Yossi, the Kasav is Mana Shel Shtar, Mochia Cholot. Anyway, it's absolutely crystal clear that Rav Huna accepted the halacha like Rav Yossi. There's no suffix about it. Ella says to Gemara, no, we have to give a different reasoning for Rav Huna. And why is he considered this case of Imati as a suffix get? And if Choletzes Veinim L'Siapemes, because Mesaf Kalei, and now the Gemara on Dafai in Beis Amid Beis is going to explain the suffix of Rav Yossi and the reason why, Rav Huna, and the reason why, despite the fact that Rav Huna accepted Rav Yossi and Zman Shel Shtar Mochiach Alav, nevertheless, Choletzes V'lo L'Siapemes, and the get is a suffix get.